Hello, everybody. Welcome to Profiling Evil Live. This one is a react video tonight. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes and talk about what happened and what we know about Cairo Jordan. If some of you followed over from Duty Ron tonight, I want to shout out to Ron and to Ed and say thanks for inviting you to come over. I actually called Ron and I said, I'm getting ready to do this. And he said, oh, I'm scheduled to do it. And I said, great, I'll wait until you're done and jump on and do mine. I'm doing some of this same format we've done before, where I have some prepared remarks and some that aren't so prepared. As you can tell, I'm kind of dressed up tonight, been tied up with some court TV stuff, and this is a really cool night for me. My wife and I met with about 20 members of the First Baptist Church in our area. And there's this really cool thing. It's called an ancient tabernacle. I don't know if you've seen it. I know the Presbyterians have done it. The Latter-day Saints are doing it. But it's this full-size replica of the Old Testament tabernacle. If you think about the Israelites when they fled Jerusalem, they were out and they decided that it was time to build a tabernacle so that the priests could go in and get more inspiration, talk to God in their opinion. Anyway, they have built this full-size tabernacle, and this thing is really cool. In fact, let's see if I can show you. I grabbed a couple of pictures from tonight to show. Oh, let's see here. I got the wrong thing on there. I'm going to kill that and pull this picture up just to show you. And again, I want to shout out and thank Duty Ron for making sure that you all knew that I was doing this tonight. So let's see. Oh, and great reason for me to also remind you, if you didn't catch it earlier today, I talked a lot about Brooks and his guilty plea, and frankly, want to know what you're thinking about that as we talk. It was great to see that thing come to a resolution. And I don't know if you watched that incredibly loud human being for the last couple of weeks, as guilty plea after guilty, or a guilty finding after guilty finding after guilty finding came through. He just hung his head and stared at the tabletop in front of him. First time I've seen him so quiet. But let me flip over to these other pictures because it's kind of cool. So this was the group of Baptists that we were with as we were going through this thing. I'm going to see if I can zoom in a little bit here. But oh man, we had a lot of fun. And this is that replica of that old, ancient, Old Testament tabernacle. Don't know if you're interested or not, so I'm going to stop, other than to say we had a great time. And that's why I'm dressed up. With my wife and I actually serve in an interfaith calling with our church, and we meet with about 180 different faiths in the area. So one week we are worshiping in the local mosque with the imams and the members who practice Islam. The next week we might be with the Jewish congregation in the synagogue. The next week with the Buddhist monks, and I think you've seen me bring on the Buddhist monks before and chat with them, and then of course with Christians, and we just have an amazing experience. But let me just see what people are saying here, and let's jump in. And hello to everybody. Alicia B, hello. Integrity, thanks for jumping on. Don Marie, Miss Amanda. Here we go. Miss Amanda says, I'm so exhausted by the many, many, many murdered and discarded children cases. I wouldn't leave shoes laying out of the way. Yeah, it is really sad. And I kind of talk about that as we go through. It's really sad. But Dyson's Adventures, hello. Great to see you. Integrity, Exquisite Candy. Do you do candy at Christmas? It's getting Christmas time, folks. Time to start thinking about toffee and chocolate. uh, anyway, well, you know what? What I want to do is I want to jump right into this from Michelle Morris, counselor. Yeah, I mean, did you think it would be anything but? And it was sure great to see that thing come down. It also was interesting at that 11th hour when the Reddit baloney came out, and hopefully that will all be tucked away and be done away with. Let's see. Well, you know what? I want to jump right into it because we got a lot. I want to play parts of the press conference on Cairo. I want to play a little bit from the funeral because if you didn't catch the funeral, and I don't know if you ever caught my video back in April when I did a video on the recovery of this little 5-year-old's remains. And the thing that I was most touched with at that point was the way in which that community rallied around this child and took care of his burial. But anyway, let's jump into this. We'll come back and answer some questions and just chat a little bit while we go through it. And it's just great to see y'all. Thanks for jumping on. Indiana police have positively identified that 5-year-old boy that they found back in April, deceased in a suitcase. The community rallied around this little tyke, and they even paid for his funeral. Today, they took that little boy that they once named Angel, and they gave him his official name, Meet Cairo Jordan. Hey, thanks for joining Profiling Evil for this special edition on the recovery and the beginning stages of arrests in the Cairo Jordan case. This little 5-year-old boy was found stuffed in a suitcase in a little town in Indiana. It would take about 6 months for police to figure out who the child is. Now, I hope you're going to take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button, and ring the bell so you're getting all of our notifications. Folks, this is Profiling Evil. When police discovered the 5-year-old in the wooded area of Washington County, Indiana, police responded. The responding officers and the community took notice. In fact, it touched them deeply. This case would take a while for the medical examiner to release that the child had died from an electrolyte imbalance, reportedly caused by a severe stomach bug. That's something that could have been taken care of by a simple medical visit and perhaps a few antibiotics. But instead, it appears this child was allowed to suffer until he died. You know, electrical imbalances can cause a whole bunch of different medical problems. When they're severe, like in cases like Cairo's, they can be life-threatening. And just a quick tutorial, I looked this up online. Electrolytes dissolve in our body's fluids, and they play this really important role in our physiological processes. They impact our muscles, our nerves. They're critical for making sure that our blood doesn't get out of whack. Now, news is coming out that his mother may have thought this little tyke was possessed by a demon. Does that remind you of Lori Vallow in some strange, twisted way? Remember this mother's name, though, because she's going to be running from police until she's caught. She's clearly shown her colors. She's a 37-year-old African-American named Dejuan Ludi Anderson. She was last known to be traveling with another woman, a 40-year-old named Dawn Elaine Coleman. She was from Louisiana. Anderson's from Atlanta. Now, Coleman was arrested in San Francisco in a joint police operation. She's been charged with negligent homicide. Anderson remains at large, and everybody's asked to be on the lookout for this woman. Her picture's right here, and she's about 5'5" tall, was last believed to be seen in the Los Angeles area. But recent sightings have placed this woman in San Francisco, down to Los Angeles, further south to San Diego, over to Las Vegas, Nevada, and also in Houston, Texas. But keep in mind, this woman lived in Atlanta, Georgia. So she's crisscrossed the United States from place to place. And you know what? That means that she could be anywhere. Now, I've also indicated on this map previous residents in the Atlanta area. Now, I don't know if you remember watching my video when this little kid was recovered and the overwhelming response that came out from the community. Again, remember, they paid for his burial. I was really touched by one portion of the memorial service that I watched online. I wanted to share it with you. It's where a police officer comments about this little boy they named Angel. Now, this officer is clearly Christian, and he quotes the Bible as he's sharing this eulogy of words of comfort. Now, if you don't want to listen to it, skip ahead if you don't want to hear what he has to say. But I just want you to know I was deeply touched and felt like I wanted to replay it. I was touched by the compassion of this police officer and, frankly, the community who rallied around this little Angel and ensured that he had a proper burial. It was something that his mother or her companion didn't care to do. You know, it really troubles me. It's like Harmony Montgomery and, frankly, so many other children whose family members just don't report them missing. Well, for many of us, this is mind-boggling. Let's watch this video.
I'd like to thank Todd for giving me an opportunity to speak this morning as well. I've had some difficulty in narrowing down what I would like to say this morning. I've experienced many different emotions as I prepared for my time this morning. Since this all took place, I've asked myself numerous times, why? As I thought about Angel, as I thought about the situation, why? We may not know why, but we can find comfort as we contemplate where Angel is now. He's at rest. I would like to read a passage of Scripture from Matthew the 18th chapter as we think about Angel. Matthew the 18th chapter, beginning in verse 1. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus, saying, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And calling to him a child, he put him in the midst of them and said, "Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven." Jesus held up for his disciples, and he held up for us a child as an example. God holds children in high regard. We know this, and we can see this throughout all of Scripture. He told us to be like children. That was the only way that we can get into heaven. We should look to Angel as a child, as an example of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and faithfulness. The qualities that we find in Galatians, the 5th chapter, that God's children are to exhibit. Jesus said that children exhibit those qualities. And so I am confident that right now, Angel is at rest. He is at peace this very moment. His soul is at peace because he was still living in innocence when he passed from this life. Jesus would want us to look at Angel's innocence and strive to live our lives in the same way. There's one other passage of Scripture that I'd ask you to consider with me this morning. Ecclesiastes, the 7th chapter, verses 1 through 4. The preacher who wrote Ecclesiastes says, "A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth." Now, this all sounds backwards, doesn't it? That it is better to go to the house of mourning. No one wants to go to the house of mourning. I would suggest to us today that the house of mourning can be anywhere, anytime, that we experience grief, sadness, difficulties, anxiety, not simply in this building today as we think about Angel. We can be in the house of mourning anytime. And for the child of God, it is certainly better to pass on to the promised reward of an eternity spent in heaven. And that is where Angel is today. When we are in the house of mourning, we become grounded in reality. We are forced to face our own finite lives. And the wise man takes advantage of that time. The wise man sees an opportunity to examine his life, to examine God's Word, and to examine his relationship with God. Let us learn from Angel and from our experience here in the house of mourning today. Let us lay to heart as we spend time in the house of mourning. Let us continue to show love, kindness, and generosity to one another. Let us be the wise men and women who realize that our lives are short and that we should live for others before self every day. We may never know the answers to all the why questions that we ask ourselves, and that is frustrating, and it keeps many of us up at night, wondering about why. But I believe that God gives us different stations in life, and He allows us to experience different situations with the expectation that we learn and grow from them, and that we always look for the good. Look at what Angel has done for our community. We never knew him in life, but he has drawn us together with love and kindness. We have put on display the very best qualities of our community as we think about and honor Angel. It makes me proud to live in this community and to serve it and to protect it. Thank you, and God bless.
Yeah, law enforcement didn't give up, and after 6 months, they were able to make the arrest in San Francisco. This was just of Anderson's companion, Coleman. Now, Anderson's on the lam. Coleman is going to be extradited back to Indiana to face felony charges while the police continue that nationwide dragnet for LaJuan Ludi Anderson. The suspects in this case are facing felony charges for negligently failing to protect this child and, of course, for obstructing justice. These women, from all accounts that I can find, aren't related to each other, and their relationship, beyond what is publicly reported, is unknown. The child's father has been located according to police, and members of the child's extended family have been notified. Now, police conducted a press conference today from Indiana. Let's watch this conference. I think you're going to find some really interesting answers to questions you might have.
Good morning. Thank you to everybody who came here today. We appreciate your assistance, and we're going to ask for your continued assistance in this matter, in this case today. So we're thankful for everybody that's here. This is a message that we want to get out to everybody and spread across the country. So it's a bittersweet day. Bitter because no matter what progress is made, what happens in a case, we're still dealing with the tragic death of a precious young child, and that unfortunately we can't change that. So bitter in that way, but the wheels of justice do turn, and we do make progress, and so we have information today regarding the case that we're thankful that we're able to come here with that information today and keep moving forward to answer a lot of questions and, again, to ask for your assistance. So I'm just going to, with me today, I'm Sergeant Kerry Halls, the Public Information Officer for the Sellersburg Post, Indiana State Police. With me today is Tara Coates Hunt. She's the Deputy Prosecutor with the Washington County Prosecutor's Office. Again, this is a Washington County, Indiana case, and their office will be handling it, as well as the lead detective in this case, Detective Matt Busick from the Indiana State Police here in Sellersburg. Also have Sheriff Brent Miller from the Washington County Sheriff's Department with us today, and we're just thankful for the support of everybody here. Just a brief overview on this case. April 16th of this year, 2022, a young child was found deceased in a very distinctive suitcase on Holder Road in southeast Washington County near Pekin, Indiana. Holder Road is a dead-end road. It's very isolated, not heavily traveled at all. That was back on April 16th again. At that time, when we were first notified of the child being discovered, very little information was there for our units, our detectives, our officers to work with. There were no witnesses. There were no family members. There were no acquaintances that came forward with any type of information. We only had what we had there at the scene, and that was it. We had worked almost instantaneously with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and any leads from that also proved unsuccessful. No matches to any child that was listed as missing. We had thousands of tips. We did have a dedicated tip line that's still open. Thousands of tips have come in over the past months. Again, this has been approximately 6 months since April 16th on that tragic morning or evening. Thousands of tips came in. Unfortunately, none of those tips were associated with this case. But we are very grateful for those tips that came in. We're grateful for the public's interest in this case, obviously wanting justice for this young boy. Again, at the time, we advised that it was a approximately 5-year-old black male child who was found in that suitcase with no apparent signs of trauma. But we are thankful for all those tips that came in. And we do want the public's help, obviously, and we're thankful for their attention to this case. An autopsy was performed shortly after that, and again, there was no signs of physical trauma that we could detect. The autopsy also did not detect any signs of physical trauma that was readily available or seen. The autopsy listed the cause of death as electrolyte imbalance that caused a viral gastronitis. Again, I'm not a doctor, so I can't explain all that, but that was the cause of death listed on the autopsy. Also, at that time, toxicology reports did not reveal anything. There was nothing in the toxicology reports that would lead us to a cause of death. From the onset, detectives and crime scene technicians and Indiana State Police laboratory personnel utilized physical evidence in hopes of discovering, determining, and locating a suspect in this case. I want to emphasize that no crime scene evidence technologies were spared in this case, in this investigation by the Indiana State Police, including those available only through federal and outside agencies. So we utilized everything we could. Anything that was a possibility was looked into, and the department was 100% behind it. Any type of funding or anything like that was needed, there was nothing spared in this case. As a result of physical evidence and the investigation itself, our detectives were able to identify 2 suspects in this case, and detectives were also able to identify the deceased child. On October 14th, based on information in this investigation, the Washington County Circuit Court issued 2 felony arrest warrants. One for Dawn Elaine Coleman, 40, of Shreveport, Louisiana. Another for Dewan, and I'm not sure about the pronunciation on this, Ludi Anderson. Dewan Ludi Anderson, 37, of Atlanta, Georgia, who is the mother of the deceased child. Those felony warrants were for neglect of a dependent resulting in death, a level 1 felony, as well as obstruction of justice, a level 6 felony. As a result of the information gathered in this investigation, Detective Matt Busick, who is the lead investigator, and Detective Chris Tucker, also from the Indiana State Police post here in Sellersburg, traveled to California. On October 19th, just a few days ago, Detective Busick located and arrested Dawn Coleman with the assistance of the San Francisco PD. This investigation is ongoing and continuing. As a result of information that's still being worked on in this investigation, the 2 also traveled to the Los Angeles metro area after arresting Dawn Coleman. They were unsuccessful in locating Dewan Anderson, but they believed she could possibly be. Again, the investigation continues, and as a result of information that's gathered, on Tuesday, October 25th, the Washington County Circuit Court issued an arrest warrant for murder for the mother, DeJuan Anderson. Again, units were unsuccessful in locating DeJuan Anderson in the Los Angeles metro area, if I did not make that clear. On Tuesday, that arrest warrant was issued for murder for DeJuan Anderson. DeJuan Anderson is currently at large. Again, she is the mother of the deceased. She is described as a black female, approximately 5'5", around 135 pounds. In her last known photo, which I have here courtesy of the Louisville Metro Corrections Department, she had dark brown hair at that time, short, dark, very dark brown hair. Again, this is the last known official photo that we have of her. We're going to attempt to get better photos. We believe we can get a better photo. Again, she's from Georgia, and we're going to attempt to get a better photograph of her for you. DeJuan Anderson is last known to have been in the Echo Park area of Los Angeles, California. But since this investigation began, she's traveled to several locations west, including Houston, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Francisco. At this time, her whereabouts is unknown. So again, she's at large, and we're looking for the public's.
Oh my goodness, folks. Thank you, Michelle. And you must think you're dealing with the biggest idiot on the planet. But what I was showing you, and you are at times, was all the places in which she was seen. We're now drilled into Pekin, Indiana, the place where this child was recovered. And holy cow, what would I do without Michelle? I pinged her and I said, "Hey, what are you doing? Why don't you come on for a minute?" And then I got sidetracked. So Michelle, I'm putting in the comments here, and for anyone else that would like to jump on for a minute and chat, the link to come into StreamYard. But I would like Michelle to come on, and we're going to just chat a little bit about crime. But anyway, I hope that kind of helps on the mapping side of things, the area we're looking at. And just because I'm just plain an idiot, let me just recap. All of these kind of purple points are places where she has been seen. San Francisco, where Coleman was arrested. Las Vegas, and again, remember that little baby's body was, that child, that 5-year-old's body, was stuffed inside of a little suitcase and dumped in Pekin, Indiana. That was painted with a scene from old Las Vegas. She has been seen in San Diego, the southern tip of California, and in Houston, but most recently, the big focus is in that Echo Park area in Los Angeles that I was pointing out. So I'm going to go back and I think I kind of summarized everything that I yapped about. And again, thanks for your patience with me. At some point, I got to get the back office back on the line here to help me out on some of these things. But let's go back and finish out this press conference, and then I'm going to bring on Michelle. We're going to talk a little bit and cover a few more things.
And locating her. At this time, we can also identify, excuse me, identify the young man that was found in the suitcase. He was Cairo Amar Jordan. Cairo Amar Jordan was from Atlanta, Georgia. He was 5 years old at the time of his death. And Cairo would have turned 6 this past Monday on October 24th. Again, Cairo Amar Jordan, he was 5, from Atlanta, Georgia. The Georgia the Bureau of Investigations has assisted us in this case as well. and they have made contact with his family members after we were able to get more confirmation that the boy was in fact Cairo, which this investigation has a lot of twists and turns, a lot of information. It may sound like it just moves methodically based on the information I read. So please know that this probable cause affidavit that we'll hand out has a lot of information. That's still just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of information in this case.
All right, I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to bring Michelle Morris in. Hi, Michelle.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for bailing me out once again. It's great to see you, everyone. This is Michelle Morris. Many of you have typed and interacted with her through chats. If you haven't seen the podcast that I did with Michelle, we also released it on video, where as a child, she had a serial killer reading to her, which is a great story. I hope you'll go back and watch that. But Michelle is also a practicing attorney and has been a lawyer all of her adult life. And, I thought one of the things that people continue to ask me, Michelle, and rather than flatfoot trying to describe all this, it might be kind of fun for you to also add the legal sense to it, is people get frustrated because this woman is undoubtedly going to face a negligent homicide case for allowing this child to be neglected and die. And they want to know why it's not a murder case. And frankly, folks, negligent homicide is still homicide.
It is still a murder. Actually, one of the other people in the chat and I were just talking about that, and they did change it to a murder case after they arrested and spoke with, or probably interrogated the first lady that they arrested. So they, if it's going to be negligent homicide, it's going to be that they can't prove, even if the mother was present when the child died, or the mother did something to cause the child to die, it would be that she wasn't paying the care that the child needed to prevent the death. And as a parent, you're charged with doing that. So that would be the difference in how a trial would go, is that they could have the evidence to prove that she was supposed to take care of the child and did not, and therefore the child died, versus that she did something that caused the child to die.
Yeah, and let me just pop this up. Sherilyn Schaffner says, hey, it's murder per Sergeant Hulse, which they are saying it's murder. Folks, a negligent homicide is a homicide, and this won't be a capital offense. I just can't believe that they will get or rise to that level. If you remember, the autopsy said we can't find any physical injuries. All we can find is everything that suggests there's neglect. And yet that's still murder when you allow a child to suffer and die.
Right. There's probably 4 or 5 different kinds of murder. And one of them is intentional. One of them is negligent. And they're all, of course, they're all high felonies. But then in most states, a capital murder is something that's considered worthy of the death penalty. And they certainly wouldn't be able to prove in this case, unless something happened, like they got video to prove that there was an actual action by the mother that killed the child. Apparently in the Harmony Montgomery case, they've got the stepmom now testifying that he actually hit the child and she saw him hit the child and cause the death, or they wouldn't be able to charge him with what they've charged him with. So it's kind of same thing here. Nobody that they've told us about at this point was present when the child died. They don't even know when the child died. Just
that's going to be a really interesting thing, Michelle, because as an investigator, what I want to know is, number one, how decomposed was this child when the body was recovered? Was he still in a position where you were able to tell if there had been excretions like vomiting or other kinds of things that would suggest there was life when he was placed in that suitcase, versus that he was deceased and then just packaged up and disposed of? And you're right, we don't know what Coleman has said that could be pushing this a different direction. Or maybe you could talk to the possibility that it could be, let's go a little high and hope for a negotiated plea.
Well, that's very often the case. They push it as high as they can, but they still have to, whichever district attorney is going to be handling the case is going to push it as high as they can, but they all have bosses that they have to answer to say, here's what I can prove and the basis for it. And then it's from that point that you start negotiating if you're going to plead down a case. So the reason that I said what I said earlier that makes me think that the woman that got arrested is telling them something is because, according to the officer in the press conference that we were listening to, it was only neglect of a child until she was arrested, and then they bumped it up to murder. So she's told them something.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is the other piece, the obstructing justice part. Has she been interviewed before and said, I have no knowledge, and now police are trying to find her after talking to her? I'm really interested in what the obstruction is going to be. I'm questions about why not a desecration of a body. And I mean, there
My
are so
guess
many
is
things.
that they are going to charge her with obstruction for hiding the body in a suitcase. And based on her amount of travel, it almost makes me believe that the suitcase was just dropped as they were traveling. You have not indicated that she spent any time in Indiana. So they might have just dumped that suitcase as they were passing through. That would be an obstruction. So they probably have a lot of ways to charge obstruction. And I suspect before it's all done, abuse of a corpse or desecration of a body will be added to the list.
Yeah, I think so too. Hey, you got time to hang on for a minute? I want to do a couple of questions and answers with this sergeant and the media, and maybe we can just pop in. I'm going to leave you
Okay.
up on the screen while we do it, and we'll see what happens next.
Okay.
So realize that we're still not going to be able to answer every in and out of this investigation, but we're giving you as much as we possibly can. I will give you a copy of that probable cause affidavit. That probable cause affidavit is for Coleman, who again was arrested in San Francisco just a few days ago. That's all the information I have at this time. Detective Busick, would you like to make any statements as far as?
No.
You good? So Ms. Coleman will be transported here to Indiana sometime within the next under 30 days. She will be here on Indiana soil to answer to those charges.
I'm going to pause there for a moment. And folks, one of the things that people often have a lot of questions about is this extradition process. When somebody crosses over a state line, in fact, I'm going to bring us both back on a little bigger here, Michelle. When someone crosses over a state line, the local police have to go through a hearing, and then either the individual, the suspect in this case, Coleman, has to either waive the extradition and come on her own, which means that she's transported by police or U.S. Marshals, or the court has to make that determination that they're going to take that right of choice away from her and ship her over. So that's why the police are saying, hey, it could be up to 30 days before we get her here to physically charge her. Michelle, what would you add or clarify in that?
Well, a lot of times it's not even just that. There has to be an agreement between the states to get her back across the state line, but the prison systems in both places have to figure out how to make the transportation work and dedicate some law enforcement officer to travel with her. So they have to schedule a lot of things, an actual vehicle, 1 or 2 armed officers to make the trip. And then it all, I'm sure, has to flow through the governor's offices to be signed off on. So
that's right. I did a lot of extraditions in my career, and it's kind of a fun process, folks. You take someone and before anyone else gets to board, even before first class get to board, you get to climb on the plane with your suspect. You go up and you badge the captain and you let him know what you're doing. And usually you have the last row in the plane next to the toilet. So it's the stinkiest row on the planet.
And you can't lean back.
You can't lean back. And you got the subject that you're transporting between two big burly cops, and everybody's hot and sweaty and tired, and they just want to go home. And so yeah, that's the extradition process in a
depending on how far it is, you may get to stuff her in the back of a yellow Camaro and run across,
I'm glad you remembered that. That is exactly right. Well, let's catch a couple more of his comments. Let's see here. All right, here we go.
Again, we need the public's help in locating the mother, DeJuan Anderson. So I've shown that photo. We'll have that photo for you to go out and hopefully a better photo. But we desperately want the public's help in finding her and bringing her to justice. This whole case is all about justice for Cairo. That's the only thing this case has ever been about. So I know there's been lots of questions and why don't we do this and why don't we do that. The investigators have a lot of information and they all have their reasons, but the main reason is the integrity of this case and so that justice is served. And so even some things that may seem obvious, that why wouldn't you do this, there are reasons why they can't. And if we have done some of those suggestions that come in from the public and from the media, it's very possible we wouldn't be standing here.
Now I'm going to encourage you all to go back and watch that in detail. It's really quite interesting. There's a couple of things that I found interesting. They specifically talk about the social media and the true crime community and all of the tips that they got, and said what a challenge that is. But they were really careful to say, hey, but we're really grateful that you're giving them, because they're smart enough to know that every once in a while there's a piece of gold inside that dirt.
Absolutely. They'll never turn down a tip, but they sure do like it when they're credible and they have something behind them.
There you go. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. Michelle, I'll tell you, we have been friends for a number of years now. I always appreciate your insight. I always appreciate the chance when we have to talk about Texas Rangers, which are dear to your heart.
Yes, they are.
I just hope, folks, that you'll all go back and watch a serial killer read bedtime stories to me with Michelle Morris, Esquire.
I'm digging through some of his other old case files. I'm going to see if I can come up with another case for us to talk about.
That'll be a blast. I'd like to do that. That'll be fun. And sadly, Texas is no stranger to missing children. And
sure.
I'm still wondering when we're going to see something on that beautiful little girl down in San Antonio, the little Indian girl.
Yes.
Not Native American, folks, the Indian girl. If you remember that case in San Antonio, and I feel
Leah. Yeah,
I feel so bad I can't remember her name.
That's okay. She was a beautiful little girl, and I know there's still an active case. They're definitely still investigating.
Yeah, in fact, I was in meetings in Dallas for the International Chiefs a week and a half ago, and the chief of the San Antonio Police Department was there. We had a chance to say hello and visit a little bit. And we've known each other for a long time, but those are incredible stressors that are placed on police officers to have these cases continually grinding. When you go home on the weekend, you're still thinking about that little child. When you have a Christmas holiday, you're still thinking about that little child. And
when you're 86 and it's been 50 years, you still think about that little child. My dad has a few that he still talks about.
It's really interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think sometimes people think it's just a job that you punch a clock. And I can name those few children, just like your dad, that and the ones you lost, the cases that you lost where you knew the suspect was guilty and something went wrong, sometimes even in the investigation.
Yeah.
And I suspect that haunts you as a prosecutor when you know, I should have asked this question because it's the one that would have helped me win the case and the guy's walking free.
It's true. Even on the civil side, sometimes you ask a question wrong and you lose. And for years, you think, why did I ask it that way?
Well, thanks, Michelle. It's always good to see you, folks. I hope you just fill the chat box with kudos to Michelle. She and thanks for kind of whacking me upside the head and helping me find the mute button.
Well, I appreciate you letting me come on. There's going to be a movement, though, that I read all the chat before I got to you to tell you you were muted. And we all want you to go back and do a voiceover for everything that we missed, because we want to know exactly what you said. So after this is done, you got to voice it over.
We'll see if we can do that.
Okay.
If not, just please forgive me. And don't tell people that the guy is like losing his mind, folks, because we won't get the subscribers that we want. We want to keep growing. So
go back and read the chat. Your subscribers are very kind and very understanding.
Well, yes, I would agree with that. They've always they know what they're working with. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Have a good
Michelle,
evening.
good night. Hey, let's go back to the final end of that interview and then a couple of wrap-up thoughts that I had, and then we're going to talk just a little bit more.
Questions, but yes, it's very traumatic. Again, I started to say earlier, a lot of sleepless nights, especially by the detectives involved. Detective Busick has spent numerous hours, and not just Detective Busick, but he is the lead investigator and has done an outstanding job. But all the detectives involved and the people involved in this case, so much information to comb over, to read through, to scan, to watch, hours upon hours, and obviously, you know, the people at the scene, the events that they saw unfolded before them that evening. Sheriff Miller's deputy was the first on scene. Very traumatic, event for him. So it's affected the community as a whole very deeply. So I don't have any more specific comments. I think that covers what we want to say here today. So again, once we're done here, I will get the copies of the probable cause affidavit to each of you. But the number one thing at this point is, we have a suspect that's at large. We have a murder warrant for DeJuan Anderson, and we need the public's help, no matter where you live, anywhere in the United States, possibly, out of the country. We can use help locating her. So for Cairo, help us locate her for Cairo so justice can be served for him. Thank you.
I know you did this at the beginning, but would you say and spell your name again, please?
Sure. It's Sergeant Carey Hull, Careyhuls. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, so make sure you're looking at that affidavit. It kind of goes through everything case by case and part by part. But here's what I want to know. What are you thinking about this case, folks? I keep trying to err on the side of compassion, thinking and frankly hoping that this woman might be uneducated, maybe made just some terrible decisions. And it's clear she made a terrible decision by letting this little child go without medical care. Maybe she was influenced by Coleman, but there's one thing that's clear to me. She didn't release this child to any other family member or to Child Protective Services to make sure that he thrived. Now, if the accounts that are being publicized on the media and on YouTube are true, there's also these bizarre beliefs that this child was somehow under the influence of demonic spirits. It makes it even more troubling if that's the case, that some family member didn't step up long before this child disappeared and demand that Child Protective Services investigate the matter. It's a good reminder for us again, folks, and why we have to keep saying it, I don't know. But don't allow a child to be at risk. Make sure you're reporting it. Makes me wonder how involved the father in this child's life was, or frankly, how involved extended family members were. Maybe they didn't even have access to the child. I spent some time on TruthFinder in looking into account details on Anderson. I found that she was employed, and she also had ties to businesses, including some corporations. Now, some of the filings are still intact, so I don't know if the businesses were legitimate and ongoing or if they just were shells of something. Anderson does seem to have some simple traffic citations in her background, but I'm sure law enforcement's going to release more information about any criminal history she might have in the coming days. Now, again, this map is going to show all the locations where Anderson has lived in the last 10 plus years, most in the Atlanta area. Undoubtedly, there are many people that need to be interviewed in this case, and that's when we're going to get a true understanding of what Anderson was like, what her parenting skills were like. Were there any precipitating stressors in her life or other historic information that might provide insight into the reasons why this child was so poorly treated? I don't know if you caught it during the press conference, but the sergeant on the state police kind of alluded to the fact that as you dig in, we're going to discover perhaps why they were up in that Indiana area. They even mentioned the Kentucky Derby was going on. It's going to be interesting to see what that tie is. Now, I'm going to be putting a link to Truthfinder in this video right now, and I'm going to invite you to go over and check out Truthfinder. Frankly, with the holidays approaching, it's a perfect time to use Truthfinder to find out where your long-lost love is, maybe a missing family member, or perhaps learn a little bit more about that brand new babysitter you've hired. Truthfinder is publicly available. It provides publicly available records all across the United States, and it combines all of it in an easy to read report. Now, I've used Truthfinder to better understand a lot of people in the cases that we look at here at Profiling Evil. So make sure you're entering this special code on the screen and when you try these folks out. And if you do, you're going to get this discount. Remember that you can cancel at any time. And by the way, folks, Truthfinder is an affiliate of Profiling Evil. That means we get a small commission if you sign up. All right. Hey, folks. Thanks a lot again for your patience with me as I kind of bumble along on these things. I want to take some time and maybe just talk to you now and answer some questions if you've got some specifically, and see if maybe we can get a little further down the trail on this, and then we'll call it a night. Christy Lee says, hello from New South Wales, Australia. Hey, I'll be there in a few weeks. Like watching your videos and learn a lot. Yeah, like you, I feel really bad for this little tyke. It's sad. And by the way, if you're not doing something Friday night, catch me on Court TV as we kind of wrap up the week. And we'll talk about some things there. Now, let's see. You got any questions here that maybe we can answer? This one I can answer because I just signed up for it. Somebody was asking if we had Medicare here in the States. And yeah, you can get Medicare when you're 65. So yeah, it's a great deal. You work your whole life to pay for it, but not like you Canadians. You got a little different medical conditions up there than we have here. Your taxes sometimes are a little higher too. In order to give all of that, we end up having to pay for a lot of our health care here. Looks like we got the Aussies weighing in. Got Melbourne on. And New South Wales. I think I saw somebody from Queensland a short time ago. I don't ever get to see folks calling in from Uluru, and I'd sure love to see that. I've been there and worked out in the indigenous area around Uluru. That's Ayers Rock for any of you who know the area. And landing at the airport is it's like landing at Colorado Springs Airport. If any of you have done that when it's windy, it's horrid. You make 3 or 4 attempts before they can get the plane on the ground, and you really test your stamina there. So let's see. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate you dialing in tonight. If we don't see some questions pop up that I can answer, then we're going to call it a night, and just tell you to continue watching this one, because I think we're going to see a lot more information roll out on this. I think we're going to get more details. I think we're going to learn why that sergeant mentioned Kentucky Derby. I don't know. That's always, to me, like a clue. I'm always looking at what isn't being said rather than what is being said. Got Bindigo here. Great to see the Aussies joining in. I hope you're watching Mapping Evil with Mike King, or listening on your favorite podcast platform to Mapping Evil with Mike King. It's won like national awards and international awards. It jumped to number 3 on Apple. I mean, the thing just went crazy. It's kind of fun because I talk about an American serial killer and I compare it to an Australian serial killer, and we talk about behavioral differences and similarities. I do it with this quirky journalist named Tori Shepard, who's just incredibly well known across Australia. And just a few weeks ago, we launched season 2 called Killing Betty. It's about the murder of Betty Shanks, who was killed 70 years ago in September. So we launched it the day of her murder 70 years later, and we believe we solved the murder. So kind of a fun one to listen to. It's only 4 episodes, and you might enjoy it. So go check it out. There's also at mappingevil.com some incredibly cool story maps. You know how I love maps. So I talk about each of the cases that I look at, and I explore them with a map. So go over there and have some fun, and we'll support the Aussies so they can pay for my way when I go down there. Well, folks, it's always great to be with you. I hope that you're finding Profiling Evil to be of value. I hope you'll hit the like and subscribe button. And I hope you'll share this with your friends. And by the way, do the thumbs up because it really helps us with YouTube. We love growing. And I want to shout out again to all my friends who joined from Duty Ron, and especially Ron. And Ron, without a doubt, has been a gentleman. We have enjoyed each other's company. We have argued about cases. We are often on the phone talking through things, and we try to collaborate and coordinate so that we're not stepping over each other. And I just realized that I happened to come on during Web Sleuth, so my most sincere apologies to Tricia, because I certainly don't want to compete. I just got tunnel vision doing so many things today and forgot to check that out. So from all of us at Profiling Evil to all of you, I just want to say thanks a lot, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.